So here's something interesting. Let me start off by clearly stating that the South African tourism and hospitality industry is neglecting South Africans. But let me explain. Okay, so you're back from your holiday and you've likely started to count the costs. And it's a little bit more than what you expected, ne? So the thing is that for years, South Africa has boasted some of the most stunningly natural beauty, diverse cultures, and just world-class tourism experiences. But the questions that have for some time been bubbling under are these tourism treasures now becoming a luxury only for the wealthy? Are these experiences even meant for local people? For example, a growing segment of hotels in Cape Town are now the target of foreign tourists almost exclusively. And thus, it is becoming increasingly unaffordable for South Africans. Well, middle-class South Africans, that is. This is particularly true when you look at places like the V&A Waterfront, which is said to be looking at pursuing a strategy of owning more and more of the hotels that are within the precinct. Now, for context, in 2023, total expenditure incurred on domestic trips was about 57.9 billion rand. Day trips accounted for around 20 billion rand of this, and overnight trips accounted for 37 billion rand. 2023 total expenditure was mostly driven by high expenditure on other items, mostly undefined things, 13.6 billion rand, followed by shopping at 11.7 billion rand in 2022, while in 2023, total expenditure during domestic trips was mostly driven by shopping at 18.6 billion rand, followed by costs of transport at 17.9 billion rand. Now, these numbers are just to show you how significant the domestic tourism sector is. In fact, from a Tourism Lekgotla report, it stated that South Africa recorded 38 million domestic trips, which contributed 121 billion rand in terms of spending in 2023. Now, the domestic market spending was way higher than international arrivals. And this is my point. This is what I want us to get as South Africans. As domestic travelers, we are significant players in the local tourism market. To me, it still feels like we're not taken seriously or prioritized when it comes to us being a large consumer base. Because when you look at international tourism into South Africa, we see that there's a 48.9% increase in international arrivals, with 8.5 million people visiting the country in 2023. Now, this translated itself into international tourism revenue reaching 95 billion rand in 2023. This was 92% increase from 2022 and an all-time high. But this, however, doesn't sit that much higher than what we are generating as locals. This isn't my opinion, it's data. So you wonder why then are South African tourists in their own country not prioritized on value for money deals? Why are most of these countries' experiences still much more inaccessible to normal people? Maybe let us know in the comments why you think this is the case, so that we can understand this a little bit better. The simple answer might be affordability, but then again, why would a tourism industry build products that the locals can't even afford when we are a considerable part of the market? The reality is that for many South Africans, a holiday within our own country is slipping further and further out of reach. Rising costs of accommodation, flights, and even basic necessities like food and drinks when you actually get there at the destination are making it increasingly very difficult for locals to afford or even try to catch that break. Now, I want to be really clear on this. This isn't a hit piece on Cape Town particularly, or even the Western Cape, but we have to look at this as they are South Africa's hospitality capital. And I've been to Cape Town enough times to understand what actually goes on. There's a gentrification trend that has moved from housing and property to tourism and hospitality now. I mean, some hotels in the city, like the new luxury hotel development that's happening at the waterfront's Quay 7. This is just behind the Table Bay Hotel where the helistop is. These places are now exclusively for the wealthy. And I dare you to tell me otherwise. Like, we've always known that these type of places need to be there. I mean, South Africa has its own target markets, and I guess that's fine. We don't all need to be able to afford these things, but we're increasingly seeing that there's less and less places that South Africans can actually holiday at from an accommodation standpoint specifically, and then you have to add flights. It starts to become really, really insane. Like in December and January in particular, Cape Town is just not wallet friendly for South Africans. But it's peak season. That's what they tell us. But this is also the time when most middle-class South Africans can actually travel and or have time to explore their own country. We need to find some sort of compromise. For instance, flights to places like Cape Town are just hellishly expensive. Try 7,000 Rand return per person for a last-minute 5-night or 6-day trip after Christmas, and then you're returning like after New Year's. Soon this thing's going to be sitting at like 8,000 Rand. Like, this is also because there's less and less seats. Renting a mid-sized car on that same trip, such as like a Toyota Corolla Cross, will set you back even another 13,000 Rand for the same period. That's nearly 13,000 Rand for a couple just to get there and to be able to get around. We haven't even started to look at things like accommodation over that same period. Now, I illustrate this example so that you can understand just who can start to afford these types of costs on trips like this. The irony in all of this was that just after lockdowns, all these same tourism and hospitality players were begging us, South Africans, to travel locally and to support the industry. And the minute they got back onto their feet, they went back to ignoring us. Just great, isn't it? Then there's Cape Town accommodation. Like, let's just go down to this thing. Now, recently, a tourism cost survey went and ran the numbers for that same 5-night stay, which includes a weekend, in late January. Let's say like right now, for 2 adults. This period was deliberately selected because it's just after schools open and it's technically still in season. Now, within the waterfront precinct, the prices for a Tuesday to Sunday stretch start from 280,000 Rand, and you can get some on the low end at 190,000 Rand for the entire stay. This is if you're at places like the Silo. When you get to the bottom, you're looking at things like the Marriott, etc., which are sitting at around 30,000 Rand. The 280,000 Rand for 5 days stay sounds insane, as does the 190,000 Rand. But it works out to around 28,000 Rand per night per person, which is around $1,500. It's pricey but relative when you start to compare it with similar hotels globally. Look at the Silo. Per night, they sit at around $1,000 per night. The Cape Grace and the Fairmont, they sit at around $500 per night. The fact that I'm giving you a lot of these prices in dollars is so that you can start to understand that these hotels, these places, and many more like them aren't just priced for you, the South African. They're priced in dollars and euros because that's who they're trying to attract. Is that clear for you now? Is it clear? Even as one moves into the city pole, the prices still remain really steep for South Africans. But I want us to look at what could be classified as cheaper. When you start to look at places like the Southern Sun Waterfront, around 24,000 Rand for that same 5-day stay, 2,000 Rand a night. Look at Sun Square, that's about 18,000 Rand for that same 5-day stay. And then you've got places like the Southern Sun at 16,000 Rand. These places aren't technically even cheap, but you then get to the lower end. A place like, let's say, the Hotel Sky or the Southern Sun Stay Easy. Both of these places are sitting at around 9,000 Rand for the same stay. Well, around 1,000 to 1,200 Rand per night. This is when you start to get into the economy type of accommodation. But you'd be really lucky if you were able to get any of those places still being available. Okay, but maybe let's look at an alternative. Let's look at Airbnb. Now, for some of these short-term rentals, it could work out for you, but at the same time, they're a very contentious issue right now within the city because they're impacting house and rental prices for normal Cape Townians. Actually, let us know in the comments, what type of traveler are you? When it comes to things like accommodation, hotel, apartment, are you an Airbnb person or even other? Another thing to consider when it comes to Airbnb and Cape Town is that there are indications that the Department of Tourism will start to crack down on a lot of these short-term rentals, which will likely further constrain supply. A move such as this is no different from ones that have been done globally in places like Barcelona, etc. This is just the harsh reality. We have to balance tourism with the people that actually stay there. Look, on the low end, that same trip to Cape Town over that same 5 days is going to cost you between like 40 to 55,000 Rand. It just doesn't make sense for the average middle-class South African. When we leave January, I'm going to tell you for free, don't even bother trying to visit Cape Town at the start of February because that's when mining Indaba is. And those rates at just normal places literally start to go for 33% higher than even the January rates because obviously everybody's going there. It's mining Indaba, it's State of the Nation, and then just after that there are a lot of conferences. So it becomes even worse and you're competing against corporate clients. To add insult to injury, then there's this conspiracy theory, right, around Cape Town establishments who suddenly start to have different pricing, pricier menus for tourist seasons. The going rate for 500 ml drafts in Bree Street nowadays sitting at like 65 Rand. You could possibly get away with like 60 Rand, but good luck trying to find a decent glass of wine that costs anything less. Cocktails are even worse. They start at like 150 Rand and up. They go up. Starters also tend to hover at like 150 Rand and the mains are sitting at like 300 Rand. Cape Town is at those levels now. Actually, let us know, where do you get the best and most affordable food and drinks in Cape Town? That's actually if you're buying in rands, like a lot of us. Drop us a comment. The reality is that Cape Town is actually competing with international destinations like a Dubai, a Berlin, a London, Madrid, New York, Rio, Paris. And pricing and offerings, they need to be seen in that context. This means that with all but certainty, it's going to be unaffordable for South Africans because they're not pricing necessarily for you. And everything is relative. It depends if you can afford. The other thing is that while economy hotels like a Stay Easy cater to a larger market segment that can afford, luxury hotels offer higher revenue potential, stronger brand positioning, and greater asset appreciation. Now, for a hotel group, having a presence in the luxury segment can be a very key driver of profitability and even long-term growth. So there is no incentive for these guys to build more affordable hotels in Cape Town or in central areas because property prices are expensive, but the returns on having a luxury hotel is just that much better. This is classic supply and demand economics, and it's not going to get any easier for us, the consumer. This last festive, more and more global travelers and influencers were seen in Cape Town. I mean, there were even conspiracies that like a lot of these people were being paid to come to Cape Town to boost the awareness of the city. We didn't actually get to the end of that. But a lot of these people are actually showing what Cape Town can offer to a global audience. So more people are set to come. It's now really common chatter on social media that it's cheaper to holiday in places like Thailand, Indonesia, and even Mauritius over the festive season than to be in Cape Town. If you booked a few months ago, sure, I mean, these places are competitive, but a lot more destinations are starting to look substantially more attractive and kinder on one's wallet than Cape Town over December. That's why the garden route, where I am, is also now fully booked, and maybe that's the new spot, right? Maybe that's the new local South African spot. It's not that bad. It's more affordable for South Africans. Spots like this in Knysna or Cape St. Francis, George, or even Plettenberg Bay. Is that where you guys are hanging out? Let us know in the comments so we could also start to hang out with you guys. So seriously, what can be done about Cape Town and other places like it? Firstly, and most importantly, government intervention, unfortunately, is needed in this situation. There needs to be subsidies for domestic travel. Things like considering tax breaks and subsidies for local travel companies that offer locals a better and more affordable rate to travel and see their country. Secondly, there needs to be industry collaboration when it comes to this thing. In the sense of things like packages, deals, and discounts, the industry needs to offer South African citizens only, right? Attractive packages for locals, including things like accommodation, transport, and even activities. And they need to base this on local affordability and not on international trends. I mean, all you really have to do is just to prove that you're South African. You can do this by entering your South African ID on the platform. I mean, it's really easy to prove that you're South African. All you have to do is have your South African ID. And when you book, you should be able to get better prices. Many countries actually have this option for their people. Why not us? Thirdly, we need to promote off-season travel to the domestic market a lot more. We need to encourage travel during these off-seasons to spread our tourism impact throughout the year. And also, this allows for establishments and packages to be offered at really competitive rates. Ultimately, ensuring that South African holidays remain accessible to all citizens is really important. It's not just about leisure. It's about economic growth, it's about small businesses, and it's also about social cohesion. But what are your thoughts? Have you experienced the rising costs of travel within South Africa? Maybe share with us in the comments. Let's chat about it. And also tell us about your experiences. Even give us suggestions about how you travel and how you make it affordable. Thank you for watching this video, and hopefully it was just as interesting as any other video that we've seen on this channel. Check out one of these other videos and hopefully they'll be just as interesting as this one. Cheers.